Serial killers do on a small scale what governments do on a large one. They are a product of the times, and these are bloodthirsty times. Even psychopaths have emotions if you dig deep enough, but then again, maybe they don't.
And it haunts me somewhere much deeper. Anxiety, filling up every space, no privacy. And silently, it could build and build until you finally see, whoa, it's taking over, damn, no closure, moving close.
Ramirez entered the courtroom wearing sunglasses and shackles. He's accused of 43 crimes, including 13 murders and multiple counts of rape, robbery, sodomy, and oral copulation.
On February 29, 1960, Julian and Mercedes Ramirez's youngest child, Ricardo Richard Levia Muaz Ramirez, was born in El Paso, Texas. His father Julian was an alcoholic and prone to angry outbursts that frequently ended in physical abuse against his wife and kids. Julian was a former Juarez City policeman who later worked as a laborer for the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway. Richard began smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol at the age of 10. Richard, or Richie, as he was known to his family, was greatly affected as a 12-year-old by his elder cousin Miguel Ramirez, also known as Mike, a distinguished Green Beret combat veteran who had already turned into a serial killer and a rapist while serving in the United States Army during the Vietnam War. Mike frequently bragged about his heinous war crimes and showed Richard Polaroid pictures of Vietnamese women he had raped, killed, and either decapitated or mutilated. The photos and tales Mike shared with Richard would subsequently reveal that he was enthralled, not repulsed, by them. Mike passed along some of his military expertise to his young cousin, including how to kill silently and how to effectively conceal oneself in the dark, particularly at night. Around this time, Richard started sleeping in a nearby graveyard as a means of escaping his father's ferocious fury. Richard was there when Mike tragically shot his wife Jessie in the face with a revolver on May 4, 1973, during a domestic dispute. He would later say that witnessing the murder was not traumatizing for him in any traditional sense, but rather a matter of curiosity, similar to the violent images and accounts of his cousin's war crimes in Vietnam. Richard became bad-tempered and withdrew from his family and friends after the shooting. After being sent for a number of years to the Texas State Mental Hospital, Mike was later declared not guilty of Jessie's murder due to insanity, with the shooting being linked to his post-traumatic stress disorder from his time in Vietnam. Soon after the shooting, Richard moved in with his older sister Ruth and her husband, Roberto, an obnoxious, peeping Tom, who frequently accompanied Richard on his nighttime adventures. After Mike was discharged from the mental institution in 1977, he occasionally went on these voyeuristic strolls with Richard and Roberto, watching women in the neighborhood from their windows. By the time Richard turned 14 in early 1974, he was regularly using LSD, and he and Mike started to rekindle their friendship around their mutual enjoyment of both substances. During this time, Richard started to develop an interest in occultism and Satanism. When he was a teenager, Richard started to combine his developing sexual fantasies with graphic acts of violence including rape, murder, and forced bondage. He accepted a job at a nearby Holiday Inn while still in school and used his passkey to rob guests who were fast asleep. Ramirez sexually assaulted 2 children in the hotel's elevator at least once, but no one ever reported him or brought any charges against him. He was caught in the act of trying to rape a woman in her hotel room by the victim's husband, which resulted in the immediate termination of his employment. Despite the fact that the husband beat Ramirez, charges were dismissed because of the couple's out-of-state residence, and then declining coming to Texas to testify against him. In the 10th grade, Richard had left Jefferson High School. At the age of 22, he relocated to California and made a permanent residence there. Around this time, he started using cocaine, which quickly became his preferred drug. He also started committing thefts and burglaries to get money to support his addiction. Prior to being imprisoned, He wandered aimlessly between San Francisco and Los Angeles County. Both before and throughout his year-long crime spree, he routinely traveled back and forth between the northern and southern regions of California. Mei Liang, a 9-year-old Chinese-American child, was murdered by Ramirez on April 10, 1984, in the basement of his apartment building in San Francisco's Tenderloin neighborhood. Ramirez approached Liang as she and her 8-year-old brother were searching for a misplaced dollar bill when he instructed her to follow him into the basement to get it. Ramirez beat, strangled, and raped Liang in the basement before killing her with a switchblade and hanging her partially clothed body from a pipe by her blouse. Ramirez's involvement in the murder was not established until 2009, when his DNA was compared to a sample taken at the scene of the crime. Jenny Vincow, 79, was found murdered in her apartment in Glassell Park, Los Angeles, on June 28, 1984. She had been repeatedly stabbed in the head, neck, and chest while sleeping in her bed, and her throat had been slashed so deeply that she had been nearly decapitated. Ramirez's fingerprint was discovered on a mesh screen that he had removed in order to gain access through an open window. This was Ramirez's second known murder, and it established his pattern of breaking into homes, committing particularly heinous murders, and frequently burglarizing his victims before or after killing them, primarily to support his cocaine addiction and pay his rent. Ramirez attacked 22-year-old Maria Hernandez outside her Rosemead, California home on March 17, 1985. Shooting her in the face with a .22 caliber handgun after she pulled into her garage. The bullet ricocheted off the keys she was holding as she lifted her hands to protect herself, and she survived. Hernandez pretended to be dead until Ramirez fled the scene. Dale Yoshi Okazaki, 34 years old, her roommate, heard the gunshot and ducked behind a counter when she saw Ramirez enter the kitchen. When Okazaki raised her head to see what had happened, he shot her once in the forehead, killing her instantly. Ramirez pulled 30-year-old Tsai Lien, Veronica, Yu out of her car in Monterey Park within an hour of the Rosemead home invasion, shot her twice with a .22 caliber handgun, and fled. When she arrived at the hospital, she was pronounced dead. The two murders, an attempted third, in a single day drew widespread attention from the media, which dubbed the attacker, the walk-in killer, and the Valley Intruder, describing him as curly-haired with bulging eyes and wide-spaced, rotting teeth. On March 27, 1985, at approximately 2 a.m., Ramirez entered a home that he had burglarized a year earlier just outside of Whittier, California, and shot sleeping Vincent Charles Zazzara in the head with a .22 caliber handgun. The gunshot woke up Zazzara's wife, Maxine Lavinia Zazzara, and Ramirez beat her and bound her hands while demanding to know where her valuables were. While he ransacked the room, Maxine escaped her bonds and retrieved an unloaded shotgun from under the bed. Ramirez, enraged, shot her 3 times with a .22, then retrieved a large carving knife from the kitchen. He mutilated her body by stabbing her repeatedly, then removed her eyes with the knife and placed them in a jewelry box, which he took with him when he left and kept at his apartment as a souvenir until his arrest. The mutilations were determined to be post-mortem during the autopsy. Peter, Vincent and Maxine's son, discovered their bodies. Ramirez left footprints in the flower beds from a pair of Avia sneakers, which the police photographed and cast. This was practically the only evidence the cops had at the time. The bullets found at the scene matched those found in previous attacks, leading police to believe that a serial killer was at large. Ramirez returned to Monterey Park on May 14, 1985, and entered the home of Bill Doy and his disabled wife, Lillian. Ramirez surprised Doi in his bedroom by shooting him in the face with a .22 semi-automatic pistol as Doi reached for his own handgun. After knocking the mortally wounded man out, Ramirez entered Lillian's bedroom, bound her with thumb cuffs, and raped her after searching the house for valuables. Bill Doi died in the hospital from his injuries. Ramirez drove a stolen car to Monrovia on the night of May 29, 1985, and stopped at the home of Mabel "Ma" Bell, 83, and her disabled sister, Florence Nettie Lang, 81. He bludgeoned and bound Lang in her bedroom with a hammer, then bound and bludgeoned Bell before shocking her with an electrical cord. After raping Lang, he drew the satanic pentagram symbol on her thigh and on the walls of both bedrooms with Bell's lipstick. 2 days later, the women were discovered alive but comatose and critically injured. Bell died in the hospital as a result of her injuries. The next day, Ramirez drove the same car to Burbank and broke into Carol Kyle's home. He handcuffed Kyle and her 11-year-old son and ransacked the house at gunpoint. He let Kyle go to show him where the family's valuables were, and then raped her repeatedly. Ramirez also repeatedly told her not to look at him, threatening to cut her eyes out at one point. He fled the scene after retrieving the child from the closet and retying the two with handcuffs. On the night of July 2, 1985, he drove a stolen car to Arcadia and chose at random the home of Mary Louise Cannon, a widowed grandmother, age 75. He entered Cannon's house quietly and found her asleep in her bedroom. He knocked her out with a lamp and then stabbed her to death with a 10-inch butcher knife from her kitchen. Ramirez stabbed Cannon's body repeatedly after she was already dead. Ramirez broke into a home in Sierra Madre on July 5, 1985, and bludgeoned 16-year-old Whitney Bennett with a tire iron while she slept in her bedroom. Ramirez attempted to strangle the girl with a telephone cord after unsuccessfully searching the kitchen for a knife. He claimed that when he saw electrical sparks emanating from the cord, he fled the house, believing that Jesus Christ had intervened and saved her. Bennett survived the brutal beating and attempted strangulation, but it took 478 stitches to close the lacerations on her scalp. On July 7, 1985, Ramirez broke into the Monterey Park home of Joyce Lucille Nelson. He beat her to death by repeatedly stomping on her face while she was sleeping on her living room couch. Her face was left with a shoe print from an Avia sneaker. He returned to Monterey Park and chose the home of Sophie Dickman, 63, after touring 2 other neighborhoods. Ramirez assaulted and handcuffed Dickman, attempted to rape her, and stole her jewelry. When she swore to him that he had taken everything valuable, he told her to swear on Satan. Ramirez bought a machete on July 20, 1985, before driving a stolen Toyota to Glendale, California. He chose the residence of Leela Knighting and her husband Maxon. He stormed into the sleeping couple's bedroom, hacked them with a machete, and then shot them in the head with a .22 caliber handgun. He mutilated their bodies even further with the machete before robbing the house of valuables. Ramirez drove to Sun Valley after quickly fencing the stolen items from the Knighting residence. He broke into the Covenant family's house around 4:15 a.m. He shot the sleeping Chainarong Covenant in the head with a .25 caliber handgun, killing him instantly. Ramirez then raped and beat Somkid Covenant repeatedly. He bound the couple's 8-year-old son before dragging him around the house to locate any valuable items he stole. During his assault, he demanded that she swear to Satan that she had no money hidden from him. Ramirez drove to Northridge on August 6, 1985, and broke into the home of Chris and Virginia Peterson. He crept into Virginia's bedroom, startled her, and shot her in the face with a .25 caliber semi-automatic handgun. He then shot Chris in the neck and attempted to flee. Chris fought back while avoiding 2 more shots during the struggle before Ramirez was able to flee. The couple escaped with serious injuries. On August 8, 1985, Ramirez drove a stolen car to Diamond Bar, California, and chose Sakina Abowitz and Elias Abowitz's home. He entered the house around 2:30 a.m. and went into the master bedroom. He shot the sleeping Elias in the head with a .25 caliber handgun and killed him instantly. He handcuffed, beat, and forced Sakina to reveal the locations of the family's jewelry before raping her brutally. He demanded she swear on Satan that she would not scream. Ramirez tied up the couple's 3-year-old son and continued to rape Sakina when the child entered the bedroom. Sakina untied her son and sent him to the neighbors for assistance after Ramirez left the house. Ramirez, who had been following the media coverage of his crimes, left Los Angeles and headed to San Francisco. On August 18, 1985, he entered the home of Peter and Barbara Pan. He shot the sleeping Peter, age 66, in the temple with a .25 caliber handgun. He then beat and sexually assaulted Barbara, age 62, before shooting her in the head and leaving her for dead. At the crime scene, Ramirez used lipstick to scrawl a pentagram and the phrase, "Jack the Knife," on the bedroom wall. When it was discovered that the ballistics and shoe print evidence from the Los Angeles crime scenes matched the Pan crime scene, San Francisco's then Mayor Dianne Feinstein divulged the information in a televised press conference.
The ballistics on the weapon that killed both Mr. and Mrs. Pan out on Eucalyptus over the weekend are the same ballistics on, I understand, more than a dozen murders committed in Southern California.
This leak infuriated the detectives in the case, as they knew the killer would be following media coverage, which gave him the opportunity to destroy crucial forensic evidence. Ramirez, who had indeed been watching the press, dropped his size 11.5 Avia sneakers over the side of the Golden Gate Bridge that night. He remained in the area for a few more days before heading back to the Los Angeles area. After the almost encounter at the Romero residence, Ramirez broke into the house of Bill Carnes, age 30, and his fiancée, Inez Erickson, age 29, through a back door. Ramirez entered the sleeping couple's bedroom and awakened Carnes when he cocked his .25 caliber handgun. He shot Carnes 3 times in the head before turning his attention to Erickson. Ramirez told the terrified woman that he was the Night Stalker, and forced her to swear she loved Satan as he beat her with his fists and bound her with neckties from the closet. After stealing what he could find, Ramirez dragged Erickson to another room before raping her. He then demanded cash and more jewelry, and made her swear on Satan that there was no more. Before leaving the home, Ramirez told Erickson, "Tell them the Night Stalker was here." Erickson untied herself and went to a neighbor's house to get help for her severely injured fiancé. Surgeons removed 2 of the bullets from his head, and he survived his injuries, amazingly. Erickson gave a detailed description of the assailant to investigators, and police obtained a cast of Ramirez's footprint from the Romero house. The stolen Toyota was discovered abandoned on August 28 in Koreatown, Los Angeles, and despite Ramirez's careful efforts to wipe the car clean of his prints, police obtained a single fingerprint from the rear view mirror. The print was positively identified as belonging to Ramirez, a 25-year-old Texas drifter with a lengthy rap sheet that included numerous arrests for traffic and illegal drug violations. The identification of Ramirez's print was described as a near miracle, due to the recent installation of the system, as well as the fact that the system contained the fingerprints of criminals born after January 1, 1960, only a month before Ramirez was born. On August 29, 1985, Law enforcement officials decided to release a mugshot of Ramirez from an auto theft arrest in 1984 to the media, giving the Night Stalker a face. It was announced at the police press conference, "We now know who you are, and soon, everyone else will. There will be no place you can hide." Okay. We have now covered who the Night Stalker is, and in the next video, I will cover how he was finally caught and arrested. Thanks for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.